is just a map. It's nothing different than playing a video game where you have not 3, but 7 different points, 7 different locations on the fretboard, right? They're different nodes on the fretboard. That's all it is. They're physical nodes. They represent fixed places in sound as well because they represent relationships or changes, distances between those. So if I just pick up 3 of these, let's say I named these 3 points on the fretboard, and let's say we gave it the numbering system of 1, 3, 5, or a naming convention of I, P, and X, then if I go from my home to the school to the friend's house, then I might number it 1, 3, 5. What if I start at the friend's house and then I go home to the school? Once again, do I want to rename the nodes in the system? No, I don't want to rename the nodes. I'm still going to call this whatever numbering system X. It's going to be my friend's house, and then I'm going to go to the home, and the distance from the home to the school is the same. So this would be analogous to us naming 7 points within the system. When I name 7 points within the system, do I want to use scale degrees and rename them? Do I want to rename this 1, 3, 5, and then when I start here, name this 1, 3, 5? No, I want to keep the naming convention the same because my goal is to look at all the nodes within the system and be able to find directionality, distance between all the nodes. That's how you master the fretboard. It's just like mastering a map, and the naming convention, if we rename it, will throw us off. Now, let's add the other dimension. Let's imagine we're adding the dimension where these 3 points are going around the globe and we're in space and we're looking at it. So now there's 12 different spaces that we've cut it into that as it moves around the globe. Well, that just means that it's going to shift up, right? So now it's been moved up here from my perspective, but now when I go into it, the 3 relative positions are the same. So what do I want to do here? This would be like changing keys between the 12 keys. So this would be going from the key of C to the key of D. So now I'm looking at this note, and I'm going to say, well, now that is my center point, and I'm still going to name the 3 places: home, school, friend's house. It's still the same relationship. The distance between them is still the same. This would be analogous to the question of what's more efficient: naming all of the notes on the fretboard by note, which would be useful to do to know that you're on D, but it's more efficient to then say, I know this is my home base, and I want to give the relative positions, meaning the relative to the modes or the nodal points. So I don't really want to. It's not as helpful to see that that's a D per se when I'm playing within that key. It's as helpful to say within this shifted up position, that is the 1, this is the 3, this is the 5, this is home, this is the school, and this is the friend's house. Now, when I say home, you might think of it as tonic, right? So you might be thinking tonic, and what if I make this the tonic? I don't mean home like that's where I spend the most time. That's just what the node is called. So I might start over here and make that the tonic, meaning that's where I spend most of my time, at the friend's house. I don't like my house for whatever reason. It's, there's a lot of noise going on there. People, it's crazy stuff happening. So I'm going to go over to my friend's house. That's where I spend my time. So I'm still going to call it my friend's house. I'm still going to call it number 5. And even though that's where I spend my time, and then the home is going to be, 1 and 3. That's going to be the idea. All right, keep that analogy in mind as we think through this. So the traditional system limitations uses scale degrees relative to a key or tonic. So the result, you relabel every scale when shifting the tonic. So let's look at this practically. And again, I'm looking at this from a practical standpoint, and I think it's objectively just obvious that when you're learning the fretboard, that's not the way you would want to do it. Now, again, you could say, well, if I'm writing sheet music or something like that, I have to conform with sheet music or whatever. And so there, and again, there could be systems like that. That could be a reason. But again, I think most of that, even all the way down the line, you could build everything out more efficiently, right, if you did it in a system like this, right? So the only reason we are doing the current system we are in is because that's the way it's kind of been built up. So I just want to point that out because that's going to make it a lot easier for you to learn the fretboard efficiently and bridge for communication if you're doing sheet music and or whatever you're doing. All right. So let's say we have the modes. Now let's say we have 7 locations, right? So what are we going to do? We're going to name I. That's going to be like our home. I is home, and then we have the friend's house. So if I stay home, what's going to happen? I'm going to go from this node to this node. I didn't go anywhere. I went from I to I, right? Or if I go to my friend's house, what can I do? I'm going to go from I to D. If I give them a numbering system, I'm going to go from number 1 to number 2. All right. Now, if there's more locations like the school, I'm going from number 1 to number 3, which I'm going to call I for home. P is location 3. 1 to 4, I to Y. 1 to 5, 1 to 6, 1 to 7. So if there's 7 locations instead of 3 locations, then what are all the locations I can go to from this node on the map from home? Well, I can either go 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7, or I, ID, IP, IY, IX, IA, and IN, right? And then, well, what if I start at the friend's house? We're going to call that Dorian. So friend's house is Dory over here. Start at Dorian. Well, now I'm going to, if I stay there and we don't go anywhere from that location, I would be going from D to D. Or I would say location 2, that we called it, to location 2. No distance change. We're staying at that location. Or we can go from D, the friend's house, to the school, let's say, right? That would be going from 2 to 3. Or I can go from 2 to 4. I can go from 2 to 5, 2 to 6, 2 to 7, or 2 to 1, meaning back to the home. I'm not saying home as tonic. That's just one location, one node within the system. In this case, this is the main place. I'm at my friend's house more than home. So from a tonal center point, it would be the friend's house, right? This would make sense. This is the logical way to do it. What do we normally do? We kind of think of like Ionian as our starting point, and then we number the system as you would think. But when we go to the Dorian, what do? We're at location 2, but I renumbered the system. So instead of keeping it number 2, I'm now calling it scale degree 1 of the Dorian. What does that lead to from a numbering system? Well, now if I stay there, I'm going from scale degree 1 to scale degree 1. I'm at home 2, but I'm calling it 1, 1 from my system, right? Which makes a problem because I would like 1, 1 to be home, home, not 1, 1 to be my friend's house to my friend's house. So now 1, 1 was I, home, home. Now 1, 1 is DD, friend's house, right? And now I've got the 2, 1 would be if the second scale degree is now going to be 1, 2, which stands for Dorian to P, like the school. Whereas it was the 2, 1 stood for Ionian or home to 2, right? ID. So see, the numbering system is off now. So by renaming the scale, every time I start from a different location, every time I spend the night at home versus every time I spend the night at my friend's house to wherever I start at, I'm renumbering that as the 1, giving all of the nodes within my map a new name. That would be like if every time I'm traveling around the Zelda world and I spend the night at a different spot, I'm going to renumber all the locations at whatever spot I wake up at whatever spot I'm starting from. See how that's a problem? I don't want to do that. I want to keep the numbering system for all the locations the same so that I can have one map from each location to each of the other locations. That's the objective from a practical standpoint. All right, what's the other problem is off by 1 confusion. The first degree of the scale is labeled 1, causing misleading results when counting distances. So analogy, so this when we rename a system, notice if you're a computer coder or just a normal measurement, you don't rename the unit that you're on as 1 of the system. You're going to get an off by 1 problem. So analogy, you have this kid, right? And the basketball hoop. The basketball hoop is the 10-foot high basketball hoop. Let's say the kid is 3 feet. He looks bigger. He's not right under the hoop right now. But let's say you're measuring from the top of the kid to the basketball hoop. How far is that distance? Well, you can say, well, of that system, his head is going to be unit 1, right? That's the first degree of my system, and then it's going to be going up 8 feet with head 1. It's the 8th foot up, right? But that's not how you would normally do it, right? That you're going to be off by 1 if you do that, because you shouldn't start at 1. You should start at 0. His head is 0.0. I don't need to rename it. We're going to start from above his head and say from above his head, there's a distance of, we'll imagine, 7 feet, right? So if he was 3 feet, there's a distance of 7 feet above his head. The current system is labeled to rename the first point that you're on, which means that you're always off by 1 from a distance. All right, let me explain this. So this is how you would normally think of it, right? Let's say you're home again, and I can either go to 7 different locations. Home to II, ID, IP, IY, IX, IA, IN. Now, there's 2 different units of measure. We have a 7 scale. We have 7 notes in our scale, which represents 12 notes in the actual musical alphabet. So we actually have 2 sets of ways that we can measure, either by scale degrees, which I would call the modal half steps. I'm calling them because we call each of these nodes a mode. And then we have actual half steps, which are like our baseline unit, miles. So let's say we're going from eye to eye, home to home, is a distance of 0, whether you're talking about modal half steps or actual half steps, notes. If I go from I to D, my house to the friend's house, we're going to say how far is that? We can say it's going from 1 to 2, or let's say it's going 1 modal half step. It's going from one to the next unit within our system. And if in terms of actual distance, like miles, we're going to imagine it's actually 2 miles. Now notice you could go clockwise or you could go counterclockwise in our system around the block. So if there's 7 units, we could go distance-wise the other direction, -6. -6 and 1 is 7, right? I could go the other direction. There's 12 units from a half step standpoint, 2 in one direction, 10 in the other. Let's say we're going to the next unit down. We're going from I to P. Well, in our system, there's only 7 units, and we're going to say like they're in order. So that means that I'm going to go 2 modal half steps up, 2 locations up on my 7 location system, right? In terms of actual miles, or in our case, notes, we're going to say that's 4 notes away. I can go around the block the other way, which means 2 minus 7 is 5, or around the block the other way, 12 minus 4 is 8, right? So that's going to be our system. This is